Hello there, it's Frank Crenshaw, Frank's Plastic Modeling Page. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the very simple, very powerful, kludgy, hard to use, but absolutely free to you piece of software that you can use to make really excellent masks. I'm of course talking about the Silhouette Design Suite. You can use other things. If you have a bunch of money and you're doing 3D printing or something like that, and you don't mind climbing a super steep learning curve to get to where you're productive, you can of course use the CAD software. CAD software is Fusion 360, SolidWorks, AutoCAD, probably others. Those are the three I know. I know how to use all three of them. They're powerful. They're very powerful, and you can totally make masks with them in ways that you will never be able to make in Studio. You can make great design features. You can do all kinds of crazy things in CAD. Mostly that's used for 3D printing though. If you happen to be doing CAD for 3D printing, yeah, sure, you can use CAD. Um, the next step down, we have Adobe Illustrator. These are the vector-based 2D drawing programs like Corel Draw, Adobe Illustrator, Affinity Designer, and even the free Inkscape, right? So if you use either one of these, they're useful and they have more powerful features that can be used to make designs in of course that the studio software can't. But the downside to most of these 2D ones is again they have a little bit of a learning curve. They are more complicated to learn. The one that makes no sense to me is Adobe Illustrator or Corel Draw. I wouldn't recommend you use either of those to make masks specifically. If you happen to own those softwares for any other reason, like you have a desktop publishing company or you're using it to make decals, something like that, then it makes a lot of sense. But if you're just buying software to make masks with, don't fall for the hype that you should be using Illustrator. That's a really bad idea. That's a little like buying a bridge in Brooklyn. Where buying AutoCAD is a little bit like buying a Formula One race car to get your groceries. Buying Illustrator to make masks is literally like buying a bridge in Brooklyn. Don't do that. Especially when there's the free Inkscape out there. Download Inkscape and learn that really quick, and then, you know, that's pretty easy. Now, one that is worth looking at is the Affinity Design. That's actually fairly inexpensive, and there's several features in the cutting edge on how to use it. So you can look those up. Drew Manton made them. It works fine. All right. But what I'm talking about is the free one, and that's the Studio Design. So if you're interested in learning how to use this free, kludgy, hard to use piece of software, hard to use. Whenever somebody says that this piece of software is hard to use, what they're really saying, and this is important, pay attention, what they're really saying is, I have no idea what I'm talking about. No idea. Their lips are saying something, but what they're really saying is, shit, I don't know anything about that. And I don't know why they can't just say that, but they can't. So what they say instead is, oh, it's terrible. It's a terrible piece of software. You should never use that for math. Bull pucky. I'm about to show you that Studio software is super powerful. However, you will need two things. One, an open mind, and two, a scanner. Well, let's jump onto this and let's see how it goes. As I've talked about before, the Studio software when it comes up looks like this. And we're going to do something a little different with our Studio because we have a tool for layers, and that's this box right here. We open the Layers tab and we have two different layers. I'm going to actually add a layer. And I'm going to name this layer. I'm going to rename this to Image Layer. And I'm going to rename this one to Mask Layer. You can rename these anything you want, but that's what I'm going to do. First thing we have to do is bring an image into Studio. And today, I'm going to bring an image in of a decal sheet that I scanned, an old decal sheet in 30-second scale. The important thing to note about these decal sheets when you bring them in like this is that you have to scan them at a high resolution. In this case, the decal sheet has been scanned at 1200 dpi. Okay? The reason that's important is when I zoom in, I really want to be able to see the detail. And one of the details that I'm seeing when I zoom in, I don't know if you can tell, but wow, look at that. This decal is actually so old that the varnish is cracked. If I were to put these decals in water, they would disintegrate. Okay, so now we have our drawing, right? I'm just going to move it, and it doesn't matter where you do your drawing. It can be right where your cut window is. It can be down here. It doesn't matter where you put your. It doesn't matter where you put the drawing or the image layer. But now that the image layer is down, I am going to lock it. That means I can't select it, which means that I can't actually move it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. We're going to draw one of these skeletal tails. Do this. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the mask layer. Then we're going to go over to our tools over here, and we're going to select the draw a curve shape. And then I'm just going to start here. I'm just going to draw a circle, a connected circle basically, around this thing here. And if you notice, I'm not actually following any lines. I'm just connecting it. So this is the only time I think that a snap will work. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on this. Oops, I have to get out of this thing, and I have to get into the select mode. There's two different select modes. And this is the area right here for select. What we want to get into now is the edit point mode. I can either do that by clicking this button or double clicking this. And now if you look, I have full access to my points, which is what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start moving these closer to my object. And right now they're not right. I mean, you know, they're not right, but I don't care because I'm going to make them right. And when I'm going to do that with these spline handles, and I'm going to do that by adding extra points. All right. So you got this thing is starting to get a little bit closer. Now you notice that I can at least zoom in very closely. And that's really important. And so I'm just going to start selecting. And I'm moving the points right now, but I'm going to be adding other points as well. And the other points will tighten this up. And you can move these handles so that they make more sense. But as you can see, I'm starting to get a pretty good outline of this particular element. So there you go. That part's done. Now that was super easy to do, right? So let's do the next part. We go back to our curve tool, and we'll do this blade. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just I'm just trying to make a connected shape around it. And then I'm going to click on it. I'm going to double click. I'm going to move the points around. Now I have a few points here. They're not a lot of them, right? So one of the things that I can do, right, is I can add points. And I do that just by clicking on here, and notice that it added a point. So this gives me great control, really great control. All right, so while this isn't as powerful as CAD software, not even close, this is pretty darn useful when you're doing these cut masks, these cut mask tracing like I'm doing here. So when people say that the software is clunky, you really, what they're really saying is they don't know how to use it. Honestly, the people who don't know how to use the software say that. There's some tools up at the top here, and this is telling me that this is set as a corner piece, which is important. So that allows me to, whoops, see, I got to get back into the edit point mode. That allows me to drag this point down. And I actually kind of want this point right here. And then I want this thing to kind of go this way. I have to change this point. If you look at this point right here, this is it's set at a curve point, and what you want to do is make it an end point. And so when I make it an end point, I can now point the spline handles in different directions. And what that allows to happen is it allows me to change the shape of it in opposite directions, which will allow me to make a very accurate spline.
without radically affecting the other side, and because clearly it has to dip for this side of the sword. All right, so we're just going to move this to here. And we will again have to make this an endpoint because it's going to go in two different directions. We already made this one an endpoint. So now it's just a matter of making this spline line up along this cut line. All right, we will bring this piece down here and we will do very similar. We're just lining these things up. If you don't like this point here, you can delete it. And that can be useful too. And now what I can do is I can drag from the, I'm coming from the inside of the drawing, pushing out towards the edge. Oh, I don't want to move it. Undo. What I want to do, yeah, I want to click on the design, and this forces a point to be generated. And notice how accurate that just made that. And that's a very clean, very crisp line. When I cut this on my cutter, it'll be absolutely beautiful. Now we have a problem though. We have this. Notice when I click on this point right here, that it selects the segment, and the segment is curved. Well, there's a real easy way to fix that. I'm just going to click on this, and I'm going to convert it into a straight node. So there we go. That fixes that. And everything looks pretty good here, but I do kind of want another point here. So I'm going to come from the inside. This time I'm going to come from the edge, moving towards the center of the mask. I'm going to push this out just a little bit, and there you go. All right, so now we have two parts of this mask already made. All right, so now we're going to make this inner face. So the first thing we'll start with is right here. I select my curve tool and I just draw around it. Now you could trace around it if you like and try to get it all precise, but honestly I just do this. I mean, there's no really right way or wrong way to do this. And so then you just start moving these points on to where you want them. And as you can see, this isn't very close yet. So we use the spline handles. We use the spline handles to start adjusting to where things ought to be. I'm going to add a point here to help bring that point in. I'm going to add a point here to help bring that point in. And I'm just going to tighten this one up. Now I'm going to have to bring another point. Well, actually I don't entirely have to. I think I'm good. And I am going to bring a point here to bring this in. Alright, so now we got the eye more or less sorted out. It's not perfect. You could goof around and make it perfect, but honestly, for the scale we're working in, you don't need to. Alright, so let's make another one, and now we're going to do the nose. I'm going to do a slightly different technique here. On the nose, I'm going to trace along the actual edge. Now, when I do this, I'm creating more points. This is why I don't do it. I'm of the firm believer that the best masks come with the fewer points. But I want to show you can do it both ways. The one thing I don't recommend you do ever is auto trace. And we get modelers who come into the cutting edge and they're, oh, auto trace works great. You just have to do this. You just have to. The problem is with auto trace is it's going to pick up these irregularities and it won't make a straight line, and it'll put in thousands of points. and when you go to cut it, it will be a bit of a nightmare. So be warned on that. Well, anyway, okay, so we got the nose done. I am going to edit this though. Okay, so now let's add the face. Same little trick. We go down to our curve shape and we just draw around it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be close. All it has to be is connected. And the reason is we're going to be able to add points. As we actually build it, we'll be able to add our own points. So if you get it just kind of close, that's really all you need to do. All right, so now we look at this particular thing, double click on it to get to the point edit, and now we start moving our points in. And again, I don't care if they're not perfect because I'm going to take steps to make them perfect. See, it already looks better even though it's not perfect. Alright, some 20 minutes later, and we now have a completed mask that will fit on the tail of our F-14 Tomcat. So I'm going to take a little bit of a step here for housekeeping before I go and do anything and wind up screwing this up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and open my layer panel over on the side, and I'm going to hide the image layer so that the only thing that is visible at the moment is my actual mask cut. I'm then going to select every element, and the reason I'm doing this is I want all these things to stay together, and you can do this in one of two ways. I'm going to make a compound path, and that allows me to just click on the object as a whole, and now I can move it. Well, as you know, there's another element on the tail, an exact same copy of this particular thing. And my cut window. So there's one. I'm just setting it there for now. But I want two of them. Well, how do I do that? Well, that is really simple. I'm just going to duplicate this. And so now I have two of them. Okay, well that's great, but it's facing the other direction. All right, so how to fix that is we go over and we will flip this horizontally. There you go. So now we have both tails masked. So as you can see, Studio has some very powerful tools which will allow you to make masks very quickly, very simply. There's other video I have planned, and that's to show you how to make placing templates, and I'll do that in another video. But for now, get started, go out and see if you can figure out how to use this manual tracing and make yourself some masks. Feel free to subscribe and like my channel, and provide any comments that you feel are relevant to this particular subject. I am always learning. I have plenty of things I don't know, so I'd love to hear what everybody else's experience is or any other pitfalls that you've had. And with that, I will see you guys on the interwebs.